Hi guys, this is Desiree with Quiet Creativity Unboxed. Today we are going to make a hop shelf sitter. I'm going to take a wooden 4-inch letter H and replace one leg of that H with this wooden bunny. Simply set your bunny on top of the letter, mark off where you need to cut. I used a jeweler's saw which worked out great. Once you have it separated, we're going to adhere the two pieces together with some Gorilla Glue. Stand it up to make sure it's level and allow that to dry. Once it's dry, we're going to use the Gorilla wood filler to fill in any crevices or spaces between the letter H and the bunny. Just be sure to press that into all of those crevices. And once you have that in, you're going to let it dry. After it dries, we're going to sand it down using the sander tool. Make sure the front and back of the bunny are smooth. And don't forget to get into those crevices. You can just take a piece of sandpaper and get in there as well. Sand it down and clean it off. So now we can start painting. I am just using a basic white acrylic paint. You can use chalk paint, or you can even use a totally different color and paint the entire thing. I'm also going to go ahead and paint the back of the bunny. That way, if I decide I want my bunny to face left, I can switch it that way, or if I want it to face right, I can switch it to the right. I'm going to make sure I paint the edges of the entire bunny. And then I am also going to paint the letter H because that comes in a glossy white and I want the piece to look cohesive. So I'm going to paint the front and back as well as the edges of the letter H. And once I have that done, I'm going to dry it up. And I'm going to do the same thing with the letter piece so that it blends in with the other pieces as well. Paint the edges front and back, dry that up. And now I'm going to move on to the egg. The egg is 4 3/8 inches. It is flat on the bottom so that it stands. And I'm going to use the same white acrylic paint to cover the entire egg. It doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to decoupage the egg as well, but you do want to be sure to cover the entire surface of the egg. And once you have that covered, you're just going to go ahead and dry that as well. And now we can start decoupaging. I'm using a 2-ply beverage napkin. You just want to remove that extra ply. I used Scotch tape to make it easier. And once you have the two pieces separated, you just go ahead and cut it down to size. Apply some Mod Podge to the bunny, and we're not going to cover the H. We're going to leave that white, but just make sure to get full coverage on your bunny so that you can apply your napkin or tissue paper or whatever you're using. Dry the Mod Podge, and then you're going to take your napkin and position it on your bunny. Get the design in the area you want. I just want to put that larger flower somewhere near the center. Smooth it out with your fingers. Cover it with some parchment paper, and then you're going to take an iron and just iron over the bunny to make sure the napkin is adhering. And then once you remove that, we can go ahead and start trimming the excess napkin from our bunny. Trim around the entire surface, and once you have the excess cut off, you can go back in with your sanding tool and sand off any remaining napkin. Again, be sure to use a piece of the sandpaper alone to get into those small crevices. And then we're going to do the other side. This time I traced around the bunny onto the napkin rather than adhering the entire napkin to the bunny, but you can do it either way. Once you have it traced out, you want to cut around the shape, but when you're cutting around, just make sure you cut on the outside of the line. You don't want to cut it too small so that when you go to place it on top of your piece, it's smaller than what you need. So if you cut it outside of the line and you have that excess, you can always trim it later. But if you cut inside of the line, you can't fix that. Add some Mod Podge to the other side, and we're going to just do the same steps. Once you have the Mod Podge on, place your napkin on top. And this time I dried it after I placed my napkin on top and not before, but it works either way. Smooth out any wrinkles, dry it up, add your parchment paper, iron it again. And then we're going to remove the parchment paper and sand around the piece as we did on the front side. Next, we're going to add Mod Podge on top of the napkin so that we can seal that onto the bunny. Cover the entire surface, and then we're going to dry it with our heat gun. Flip it over, and we're going to do the same on the other side. Add Mod Podge to the napkin and dry it with the heat gun. As I was sanding the excess napkin from the bunny, I unintentionally distressed it. It wasn't the look I was originally going for, but I liked the way it turned out, so I decided to go ahead and distress the letter H and the letter P as well. Next, I'm going to decoupage the egg using another beverage napkin that complements the one we used on the bunny. Just going to cut it down to size, cut around the edges to get off that gold foil. And this time, instead of cutting the excess white portion off, I'm going to use a water pen. And the reason I'm using a water pen instead of a pair of scissors is because if you cut the edges straight, they stand out more when you apply them to the surface. But if you take your water pen, or if you don't have a water pen, you can use a wet paintbrush and you rip those edges off gently. Once you adhere it to the egg or whatever surface you're using, they blend in more with that surface. So I just go around the entire design, whatever section of the design I want to use, using my water pen and gently tearing off the excess portion that I don't want to use. So on this egg, I'm going to use this entire portion of the napkin because the egg is rather large. Again, I'm taking out the sections that I don't want to use. And after I get all of those sections off, I also go back in with a pair of scissors and I make some slits into my napkin because we're adhering it to a curved surface. When you add those slits, it makes it easier to lay it down on the surface and you get fewer wrinkles. You'll still get some wrinkles, but it's easier to smooth it out onto your surface. So we're going to add the Mod Podge to our egg in the area where we want to place our napkin. And once we have that on there, you're going to place your napkin down. I like to smooth it out from the center out to the edges. And again, as you can see, because I put those slits in there, it's easier to lay down. If you need to add some extra slits in your design, you can add those as you go along. And again, it makes it easier to apply your napkin to a curved surface. Once you have your design on, smooth out as many wrinkles as you can, and then we're going to come back in and seal it with the Mod Podge. You can also, as you're applying that Mod Podge top coat, smooth out some of those wrinkles with your brush. So don't worry if you still have some in there, you can try and get some more out. But again, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to have some wrinkles, but do the best you can. It's going to look good either way. Once you get that on, we're going to dry it with our heat gun. And now I'm just going to continue decoupaging my egg using the same method, applying the Mod Podge to the egg, cutting out the portion of the napkin that I want to use, smoothing it out as I apply it, getting out as many wrinkles as possible. And if I need to come back in with the scissors and add some slits, I'll do that as well. But just work out those wrinkles with your fingers, and then you're going to come back in again with the top coat and smooth down your portion of the napkin that you're using. And then I'll just continue decoupaging my egg, cutting out portions of the napkin and filling in those white spaces as I go along. For this piece of the napkin, I added the Mod Podge to the back of the napkin rather than the top of the egg, but you can do it either way. Just since it was a small piece, it was easy to do. But you lay it on your egg and you get the same results. Smooth out any wrinkles and seal it with the Mod Podge. And just continue around your egg until you get it to look the way you want. You can fill in some smaller pieces into those gaps. I'm usually a less is more person, but for this project, I wanted to cover as much of that white area as I could. So I just took smaller portions of the napkin, added it in where I saw there was too much white showing, and filled that in. Same method. If you look at the area where my thumb is, you can see where I cut that out straight, and you see how it stands out more than the other areas that I tore. So I just took a little piece and covered that area as well. Next, I'm going to take this foam carrot and restyle it to match the floral design on our egg and our letter H. Use my X-Acto knife to cut it in half, and then I'm just going to use my heat gun to warm up that glue so that I can peel off the fabric. And just remove that fabric from the entire carrot. And then once you have that fabric off, we're also going to go ahead and remove the greenery that came on the carrot and replace that as well. I am using a plain piece of fabric that complements the other colors in my napkin. I'm going to cut the fabric down to size and make sure that it fits over the carrot. And then I am going to take a few pieces of greenery from this bush. You decide how many you need. You can use whatever type of greenery you want, boxwood, fern, whatever looks good. And I am just trimming down the stems of the greenery because we need it to fit into the crevice of the foam carrot so that once we add it to our letter P, it sits flush. So I'm going to add some hot glue, and then I'm just going to add those pieces of greenery that I cut off into that crevice and get them into position. And then I'm going to add some additional hot glue to make sure they stay secure in that foam carrot. And now we can add our fabric. Starting from the top, add a little hot glue, press your fabric down, and then you're going to work your way around. Add some more hot glue down the center, and as you're adding your fabric, just try and make sure you pull out as many wrinkles as you can just to make it look good. We're going to seal the sides of it as well, all the way to the edge on both sides. You just want to make sure your fabric is secure on your carrot. And then once we have those sides down, I'm also going to flip it over and pull it taut just to ensure that it is on our carrot. And then we're going to go ahead, once we have that done, cut the excess off, but we want to leave a little trim so that we can glue the fabric to the back of the carrot. And the reason we want to do that is so that when you add it to the letter P, you don't want those fabric edges coming up, so you just want to make sure they're glued down. So I'm going to glue all the way around to make sure that the fabric is adhered to the foam carrot on both sides as well as the bottom. And once we're done with that, we can go ahead and add it to our letter P. So now we're just going to position the carrot onto our letter P. You want to stand it up and make sure that it is level with the base and not hanging over. Apply some hot glue and just attach it to the letter P. Press down and make sure it is secure. And then we're going to move on to our bow. I'm using a ribbon and trim medley that I believe is from Michaels. It does have all of those colors in the napkin, so it will pull those out beautifully. I'm just going to put each piece on in the shape of a bow. It has a little bit of rickrack, at least that's what I call it. Some satin ribbon, has some white pom-pom trim. Just when you put your pieces on, you just need to adjust it to the size you want. You can always fix it later as well. Trim off any excess. I'm also going to add just in a few pieces of that twine that we're tying it with across the bow. And I also have some white trim, more rickrack, and a beautiful lace satin in like a peachy color. I'm going to use that as well. And once you get all of the pieces on and you get it trimmed to the length you want, you just tie it off. I'm going to make a double knot so that it stays secure. And then once you have it tied off, you just fluff it up and get it to look the way you want. I did do some extra trimming of some of the pieces. It was a little too long for my little bunny, so I just had to make some adjustments. And once you get it looking the way you want, we're going to go ahead and glue it onto the bunny using some hot glue. Press it in place. And then that's all you have to do. And here you have it. Such a beautiful piece. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Again, thanks for stopping by, and see you soon.